Hello. First of all, hello, and thanks for coming. Thanks for having me here. It's pretty amazing situation to see so many people interested in AngularJS, because I remember when I started to look into this framework, I think that's more than 2 years ago, it was like completely unknown. At the beginning, it had like kind of bluish demo page, and no one was really looking into it. So it's really great to see that much interested in it. So this is kind of introductory talk where I would like to talk about what makes Angular special, what are main design decisions behind it, and how we can use it to our advantage. So my name is Pawel Kozlowski. I'm really, if I would have to describe myself with the one sentence, I would say that I'm open source enthusiast. And I would like to encourage you to hack on open source. We really need to all hands on the deck because we all benefiting so much from open source. We are getting so much free software and software of enormous quality. So if we can get more help from the community and give back a bit from ourselves what we are receiving, it would be really great. So here's my gravatar that I'm using everywhere, so you can probably easily recognize me. I'm part of the Angular and Angular UI team, and recently joined the Karma Runner team as well. I also wrote a book about the AngularJS with Peter Bacon-Dervin, who is a core committer on the AngularJS as well. So if you're looking for learning resources, here they are. But obviously, we are here not to talk about me, but about AngularJS. And what is AngularJS? So it is one of those JavaScript frameworks, or modern JavaScript frameworks, and like usually people call them MVC frameworks and MVVM frameworks or something like this. So Angular is like one of those, those libraries. And it is enjoying, or starts enjoying enormous popularity recently. So here is the graph from the Google searches that shows the number of queries for different frameworks. And we see that around 2013, something explodes, something clicks in people, and we are seeing this enormous, like the line going through the roof. But it's, and so it looks like a new kid on the block, but it's important to know that the history of AngularJS is really rich. It started over 4 years ago. And for 1.5 years or 2 years, it was like virtually unknown. I mean, there was some traffic on the mailing list, but not much was happening. And then one day, things exploded. So there is a Google behind this framework, but it is really proper open source. The whole project is hosted on GitHub. You can see all the development happening there. Vote on the issues, I don't know, send pull requests. There's really very vibrant community behind AngularJS. So if you plan to use it, I highly encourage you to look at GitHub and try to help with the framework. So before we see code examples and how AngularJS can be used effectively, we need to understand why it was designed in the way it was designed. And in turn, to understand this, we need to look a bit at our beloved browser, which is our development and deployment platform. I mean, if we like it or not, we are really developing for the web. If we are developing for the web, we are deploying to a browser. And this is fascinating and scary at the same time. Because if we think about the fact that the browser started, or the whole web started as the collection of static HTML pages just interconnected with the hyperlinks. And if we look at the applications that we are writing or deploying in a browser today, I mean, there's just a huge gap between the two. So on the left-hand side, you can see the screenshot from the Traveler magazine from 1996. And this is how the web looked like, right? I mean, the static pages, like hyperlinks, not very sexy. And fast forward to today, and we see like full-blown applications in a browser, right? This is the screenshot from Google Docs. So there is this enormous gap between how it started and how it looks today. And I guess that this evolution is great for our users, right? Because this is amazing. We can open up a browser and like edit documents like in Word. So this is great for the users. But as we were writing those more and more complex web applications, we kind of lost our way, in the sense that as unsexy this, the old-time web was, it had very simple design principles. The HTML is wonderful in a way because it's very declarative. Like we can express many things with very little amount of code. We can very quickly mark up a document and offload the hard work to a browser. I mean, we never, with HTML, we never give browsers very low-level detailed instructions. We are not saying like now render this and after render that. We are just marking up a document and leaving rendering in the hands of a browser. And if we look at the HTML, I mean, just hello world in HTML, this is very simple to understand. I mean, 5-year-old child won't have any problems understanding what's going on here. And then we move to the more dynamic web applications and more JavaScript, and this is exaggerated, of course, but this is like hello world on the right-hand side, written JavaScript style. And obviously, you will say, okay, it's not that bad. We really are writing those applications, and this is great. But I feel like, I mean, we can deliver like amazing things to a browser. But when I'm thinking about the web developers, I've got this picture on my mind. It's like really super heroic effort because we need to find with all those browser incompatibilities, with the multitude of languages that we have to use, the multitude of tools, and so on and so forth. So this is how I feel like So we need better abstractions. But you will say, okay, why this guy is coming here and like showing this hello world, in 10 lines of JavaScript code? Because today no one is writing JavaScript like this, right? I mean, we've got jQuery, obviously, which helps us a lot. And this is true. I mean, the jQuery as the library for abstracting DOM API is the absolutely wonderful thing. I mean, the amount of work that went into it is just amazing. I mean, when I think like about the pain and all the effort that those people like working on jQuery had to go through, this is like, I mean, it's only respect that we can have for those people. But in the essence, what this happened is that people working on jQuery or similar libraries, they just sorted out the problems in the DOM API. I mean, they did a job of browser vendors who couldn't agree on DOM API that should be nice API exposed to web developers. So while jQuery is doing our life a lot easier, it didn't change the programming model. I mean, we still kind of in this mindset of going to the DOM elements and like doing, like picking the nodes and moving them around and like changing their properties and so on and so on. So to get the desired effect, we are really doing a lot of kind of low-level manipulations. So here comes Angular, and there are two things behind it. The first one is that HTML is a good thing, that this declarative nature of HTML, where we can quickly mark up what's going on, is a good thing. And second, we need better abstractions. We want to kind of free ourselves from those low-level DOM manipulations. So one of the first things that is special about AngularJS, and we start to have it in other frameworks, but this is something we call two-way data binding, which basically means that as I type, right here, the things are changing. And what you can see here is the full application. Well, application is not an enormous application, but still, this is the whole code that makes this application live. So what's going on here? First of all, when you look at this code, you can see it's HTML all the way down. But HTML that was extended with special attributes that we don't know from the standard HTML, plus some syntax that resembles handlebars that suggests that there is something dynamic going on here. So those special attributes are called directives in the AngularJS world, and what they are doing, they are providing those declarative hints to AngularJS, so the framework knows how to render things or how to interact with the user. The other thing that is happening here is that in AngularJS, the model or our data are the sole source of truth. This is where everything starts with the model. So if we look closer at this example, as we type, what is happening because of this ngModel directive, what is happening here that every time as I type, the value of the input field is taken automatically and assigned to the name variable. And this is like JavaScript variable. We'll see in a second where it resides. But it's important to know that this ngModel is like taking the value and putting in somewhere in the JavaScript as the standard JavaScript value. And as soon as we've got this value in the model, we can use it immediately to render something on our page. And to have this like little example working, we haven't had to write any JavaScript code. This kind of taking or updating the model and updating the UI happens automatically all the time. So this is what is called two-way data binding, in a contrast to traditional templating engines, because we've got like plenty of them in the browsers. Those started to get very popular. But those string-based templating solutions usually work in a way that we take a model on one hand. On the other hand, we take a template, we mix it together, so it produces a bit of HTML, we put it in the DOM, and every time we need to update the UI, we need to manually repeat this process. With AngularJS, it's different. I mean, this constant updating, this updating of the model, re-rendering of the view happens automatically. And it turns out that in practice, it's enormous help, and it cuts down the amount of code that we need to write by hand. So once again, if we put side by side the approach of the jQuery, this is this kind of declarative part, right, where we describe our UI. But there's this very imperative, like low-level by hand part. On the other hand, when we look at the same example written with AngularJS, this imperative, like picking on the DOM and updating the value, this part disappears. So let's have a look at more complex example, and we will try to kind of code it together in a second. Just to see the power of this two-way data binding. So this is like a typical form. Well, typical, like a very small form, actually. It's not very typical. But even on this very small form that resembles the Twitter text box, there are there are certain things going on that we need to synchronize. So as we type, there is this number of like remaining characters that needs to update it. The state of those buttons needs to get updated, and so on and so forth. So, like if we start to write this jQuery style, we need to have those event handlers that every time we change something, we go to all elements that we need to synchronize, and we need to change those properties of those elements. But with AngularJS, its model that is the source of the truth. And in our case, the only model that we need is really the text that we are entering here. And from this text that we are entering, we can derive the whole behavior of the UI. We can, by using special built-in directives, we can say when those buttons needs to be made enabled or disabled. Also updating the number of remaining text is very easy. So just by putting text of this tweet in the model, we can drive somehow the rest of the UI from this single piece of information. So let's have a closer look at this example. So here we've got the like completely static HTML. There is nothing happening here, and we will try to turn it into Angular powered and dynamic version. So first of all, to bootstrap or to start the whole Angular applications, we need to include its libraries. And currently, it is possible to use AngularJS as without any other dependencies. You can just drop one JavaScript file and benefit from all the power of the framework. I will speak about it a bit more in a second. But yeah, essentially, we just need one file. I'm also including here something called Angular Animated. We'll see it in action in a second. So as soon as we've got the library loaded, we can use one of the built-in directives to say, like, this piece of HTML should be managed by Angular. So our application, we are going to name it demo. Well, it's not a very creative name, but nevertheless. And we can see that something starts to happen here because we had those curly brackets, those disappeared. So let's move on. Let's try to make this page more dynamic. So what we are going to do is to add something called controller. So there are two concepts that we are going to look into today from Angular rendering engine. So we talked about directives, right? Those special attributes and elements. But when we look at any UI, we were saying that the UI is rendered based on the model. But where this model resides, right? I mean, we know that this is JavaScript, but where it's coming from. So in AngularJS, there is something called scope, which may sound like a, I don't know, fancy concept, but at the end of the day, it's just an object, like a hash map, with all the data that are exposed to a template. So this is as simple as this, just a scope is everything that is exposed to a template and available for the use for rendering. Then another concept that I would like to introduce is a controller. So controller is one of those like absolutely awful words that are overloaded with meaning and probably will mean different things to different people. But in AngularJS, controller doesn't control anything. So probably the name could be reconsidered, but it's definitely not a controller from the MVC pattern. But the only responsibility of the controller is to initialize the scope, right? So we've got, on one hand, we've got the template that needs some data. Those data reside on a scope, which is just a basic JavaScript object. So all the model, all the functions available on a scope are accessible in template. And we've got a controller that initializes the starting state of the scope. So our controller is pretty simple. It just like declares some, like the max size of the text that we can enter. It declares a collection where we are going to store all the tweets to display them in the list. and we are declaring an object where we are going to store actual text of the tweet. And probably if we look at this code, you will be nicely surprised, I hope at least, to see that apart from this fancy $scope thing that we just covered, this is all pure JavaScript. There are no framework-specific APIs here. What we are operating on are just raw JavaScript objects. There is just absolutely nothing framework-specific. So this is one of the very good things because it means that there is no new API to learn. We can use any library, like I don't know, underscore or something like this, to manipulate collections or data. There is just no specific things that we need to do in order to manage our model. So let's make this controller working for us. ng controller. So we are using another directive. So by using this directive, we are saying, like, use the controller here, initialize the scope here, and as soon as it's done, we will be able to use all the variables from the scope in this part of HTML. So if you probably noticed that when I started to use type ng here, I'm getting auto-completion. And this is like one great thing about AngularJS, that the community around it is growing so rapidly, and it's so fantastic that we had a plugin to, I mean, people are using different editors, but like we had a plugin for WebStorm like really early in the framework lifecycle, and those are little things that we kind of appreciate as we need to work on real projects. Okay, so we've got here our text area where we want to type things. So this is what we saw already, right? With the hello world example, we are typing. Our text goes to the model, and everything is displayed. So just nothing fancy here. So let's delete it. We also saw how easy it's to disable some buttons, right? So we can do ng disabled, because there is no need to have this tweet button enabled if there is no valid length. So what we can do is we can define a function has valid length that is very simple and just checks if the size of the text is correct. Right, so we see that those buttons are not enabled, or this button is not enabled, and it starts to get enabled as soon as we type something. And if we delete, it also gets disabled. So once again, there is just one piece of model here. There is this text, and we are using this one piece of model to drive different parts of the UI. And we can continue like this. We can make this the other button also live, and disabled if it's if there is no text, there is no point in enabling this clear button, right? And actually clearing the button, clearing the text is also very easy, because we can say ng-click, so one more built-in directive, and we can call method clear, which once again doesn't do any DOM manipulation. It just changes the DOM, and everything gets updated automatically. So clear. Perfect. Great, it works. So now, well, we saw that we can call functions, we can write expressions. I don't remember what was the maxlen. Minus tweet text So we can write very simple expressions, and some people are scared, or scared. So yeah, you see this starts to work and so on and so forth. So we can very quickly do parts of the UI. So let's continue a bit. Let's try to add a tweet and create a list of those tweets and see what happens. So once again, we are on clicking on this button, we want to add a new tweet. So we can use ng-click. And there is the method add here, which I've prepared before. But this method add doesn't do any DOM manipulation here, right? It just pushes a new tweet to a collection of JavaScript objects. So there is just pure DOM manipulation. And there's no DOM manipulation, it's pure model manipulation. So as soon as we have those lists of tweets, we can try to display them. Right, it's empty. We're adding it. We can see it goes to the list. All the buttons are updating because after adding a tweet, we are also clearing the current tweet and so on. So like this all starts to move, and with very little effort from our part. So now, if you want to display this list of tweets, we can use another built-in directive called ng-repeat. Tweet in tweets. So what it basically means is like ng-repeat. It means like get me this li element and repeat it for each object or each entry in the JavaScript array. So we want to do this. Text. Right, and we can start tweeting now. Right, very simple. We're just adding things to the collection, and the UI gets updated automatically. And what is happening here is that we were really only manipulating model. We were just really working on the JavaScript objects, and UI was updated automatically by the framework. And this is what we mean by the declarative UI and imperative logic. So our logic, we really give very precise instructions what to do, like add this tweet, remove this tweet, add it to the collection, and so on. But on the UI side, we are not giving very precise instructions. We are just giving some hints in form of those directives, and then it's framework who decides when to add DOM elements, when to remove them, and so on. So on one hand, we are giving up a bit of control on the DOM, right? Because with jQuery, we can very precisely say what happens on the DOM. I mean, how the DOM tree is manipulated. We really got full control. With AngularJS, we are giving up this control and giving it to the hands of the framework. And it is, people might think, okay, it's bad because there is some kind of machinery that is taking control, and I'm losing a bit of this control. On the other hand, it's very good because it means that as soon as we understand this machinery, we can take advantage of it. And we can make this machinery doing the hard job for us, right? I mean, we are kind of offloading this on Angular. But having this declarative style of UI and really offloading responsibility on the framework means that we can do things that would be very hard or relatively hard to do. Sorry, it's not here. That would be relatively hard to do by hand. And one of those examples were animations. So we can see now that there is a little bit of animation when this thing is added to the collection. So how this happened, the thing is that like At the beginning, when the AngularJS was created, this support for animation didn't exist. But there was this very deeply ingrained concept of the declarative UI that's like giving a control to the hands of the framework. And since it's the framework that decides when to move DOM nodes, where to add them, and when to remove them, it means that framework has this knowledge and has all those plugin points, right? So AngularJS precisely knows when a new DOM node is getting added to the DOM tree and when it's moved in the DOM tree. And because of this, we can add those animations very easily. So here the animations are like added by based on certain conventions. So we can create certain CSS classes, and the AngularJS will add them and remove them based on the low-level DOM manipulations that it has to do. So let's move on. So when I first started to look into AngularJS, and I think it's the case for many people, this two-way data binding and this automatic refresh, and the model that is pure JavaScript, those are the things that are attracting people to Angular in the first place. This is the very visible part of AngularJS. And honestly, just having this from the JavaScript framework is already a great help. But it turns out that things get better as we dive more into AngularJS. And probably one of those things that we discover later on after working a bit more with AngularJS are directives. Because we saw those ng-click, ng-controller, and so on, those special attributes. And those are built-in directives. But it turns out that we've got, as the framework users, we've got the same APIs as framework internals, in the sense that we create directives with the same power. It's not like we have to rely on the built-in directives. We can create our own either special attributes or special elements. And by doing this, create completely new HTML elements with the new meaning. So here is like a very simplified example of the clock element, right? It doesn't exist in HTML, but with AngularJS it's very simple to write. And here is the code for the clock directive, which is really pretty straightforward, because what is happening here is that we are updating the DOM every second. So, well, I mean, one more contrived example, like, we could debug the things that we removed from HTML. Obviously, the utility of this is close to 0, so don't do this at home. But there are other usages that are more useful, and there is really a wide range of use cases where we can employ directives. And one of those very simple things where directives are very useful are just ability to take a piece of existing markup. So this is a markup to create alerts with Twitter Bootstrap, right? So this is amount of code, or this is the piece of code that we need to write to have this nicely looking alert. But as I was saying yesterday during the directives workshop, I really never remember, or in fact, I don't want to remember all those things. Like, should I add alert success class, or alert and alert success, or only one of those? So if I can create my own element and give it a name that I understand, that I can remember, and give it the attributes that I want, this is great, right? Because I'm creating my own wording for the project. And there are really many examples of like, little widgets like this. So this alert was like pretty static. There wasn't much logic going on. But directives can also have logic. So once again, here there's not enormous amount of logic, but still we need to make sure that the CSS classes are added properly, that those previous and next buttons are highlighted properly, and so on. And we could write this code using only only built-in AngularJS directives, right? This is the code, more or less the code for this little pagination thing. But it's so much more convenient to give it, once again, our own name and have this directive just unfolding the code that we see below. So once again, it's the kind of mental shortcut. We are giving this pagination thing our name because it is pagination, right? Let's name it pagination. We are removing HTML code duplication because if I have to write pagination in 10 different places, it's so much easier to just write pagination. And since all the directives can have their own template, we can also abstract markup and CSS that we use to generate the final code. So we could just swap a template and all of a sudden have our pagination look like Zerp Foundation instead of looking like the Bootstrap CSS. So another example, of the kind of higher level structure where we start to have multiple directives working together. So once again, this is so much more convenient to write, right? And we could go on and on with those, and there is really sky is the limit here. I mean, our own imagination only limits what we can do with directives, and those widget types of directives, there are obvious examples of what to use directives for, but I think you really shouldn't shy away from creating directives that are specific for your products, right? Because it means that you can take a piece of HTML with the associated behavior, turn it into directive, and reuse it in different parts of your project. And by enclosing a piece of HTML and JavaScript into a directive, you've got a chance to give it your own name that you are using in your project to communicate between developers, to define its API somehow, right? Because those namings and those attributes define an API. So I guess this rendering engine is the most visible part of AngularJS. This is what people are seeing on the demo pages, and this is what is the first exercise is always connected with the visual part. But don't get mistaken, AngularJS is like a fully functional framework. We've got everything that is needed to create full applications. We really don't need. We can create quite advanced applications without adding any other dependencies. So there are obviously files or certain parts of the frameworks that allow us to communicate with XHR or with RESTful endpoints, add animations, add touch events, and so on and so forth. What started to happen is that framework is becoming more and more modular. We start to break it up into smaller pieces, which means that you can, if you don't use REST part, you just don't include one file. If you need REST part, you just include one file. So another great thing about AngularJS is its whole testability story, and I guess this is something that really speaks to backend developers, because this is the first framework in the JavaScript world, at least for me, that really took the testing part so seriously. So what you can see here are the screenshots from the continuous integration server, where we see the test code, or a number of tests are being executed as part of each build of the framework build. So there are over 40,000 different tests executed on each check-in. So you can see that the whole team takes this testability story really seriously. But it's not only making sure that framework is well tested and it's stable. It's also making sure that the whole community can test things, can test the applications that are written based on the framework. And I think that AngularJS guys did a wonderful job here, because there is the concept of dependency injection in AngularJS, which means that you can, well, I guess benefits of dependency injections for testing are well known, but it's not only this. It means that the whole framework is composable from the smaller pieces. So if we if we, for some reason, don't like the built-in logging infrastructure provided with the framework, we can very easily swap it for our own. And the same goes for all the services. But it's not only this. It's not only having dependency injection and well-tested framework. It's also that all the tools that people are using to write the framework itself are given to the community. So the two big examples is the Karma runner, which is the JavaScript test runner for unit tests, and Protractor, that is something for integration tests. So there's really the whole testability story, that the framework is tested, people did make sure that the applications are testable, and give the whole tool chain. So as the developers, we can test things as well. And this is, for me, part of the bigger story. We can see that the deliverables from AngularJS projects are spreading beyond the boundaries of AngularJS itself. And I mentioned the Karma runner, which you can use to test any JavaScript. It's not only AngularJS. And there are more and more examples of this, where certain libraries or certain pieces of the code are kind of going beyond AngularJS community. And the future is bright, I think, for this framework, because there are work starting on AngularJS version 2, and there is really very strong drive to embrace emerging standards in the web development. And I think there is the object observe thing that will change, that for which this two-way data binding and this automatic refresh, it will be enabler of this type of approach to the UI for other frameworks. So Angular is making this possible today, but it's also working with the guys, like working on the future standards, so we can have it everywhere in the browser. The same goes for web components, right? I mean, the directives that we see, the custom elements, you can do them today with AngularJS, but there is a work to put it in a browser as the native thing. Another great thing that I personally am very excited about is the new dependency injection framework that is based on ECMASIX modules. If you are interested, there is a repository in the AngularJS organization called div2. It's very, very interesting work. So there is this drive to push the boundaries, to really push what worked in the framework to a browser. Well, what I would like you to take home from this talk, it's first of all give AngularJS a try, because I think it has very nice properties. And what we immediately see is this two-way data binding with the pure JavaScript model, and this whole UI that gets automatically refreshed or automatically repainted because it is expressed in a declarative way. And then on top of this, we can create our own HTML-based language and kind of work on our UIs using higher level abstractions. The framework is very stable, and the whole engineering around this is taken very seriously. And I'm really excited about the future. I mean, there are probably many things that we are going to see in the coming years in the browsers, like some of those concepts that we see today in Angular. Word of warning before you go. There is the picture that is quite famous in the AngularJS community. Since the concept of AngularJS are so different sometimes, people often go through these stages of this kind of roller coaster. I mean, you discover one thing of the framework, you get excited, then you're trying to do something more complex, you bump into something that was obvious with jQuery, but all of a sudden becomes hard with the framework, and so on and so on. So this is very typical, but the only thing I can say that it gets better with time. And it's really fun to work with. I mean, there are so many so many times I was like, sometimes like really web development can be painful. I mean, it can be painful. Like, think about Internet Explorer and all those things. And I was so many times like sitting and feeling like this, boy, it was fun. It is fun. Some bits and pieces, so we will have it on the slides. And this is everything I've got to say. I think we've got 5 minutes for questions, which I would, or even 4, which I would love to answer. If we can't answer them now, feel free to grab me. I will be hanging out here, so I would love to speak and answer all the questions about AngularJS.
Is there any UI framework that you recommend that is like Angular enabled, HTML advanced UI components?
Oh, you mean if the components? We're starting to have, I won't recommend anything, but we start to see more and more projects that are giving very native AngularJS directives written in pure AngularJS without any dependencies on the third-party frameworks. Because you can approach the things 2 ways. Either try to wrap an existing widget, written with jQuery style and so on, but then you need to include jQuery, the widget code, and so on. Or you can try to go native, and we start to have more and more projects like this. So for the Bootstrap, I think there is one on which I'm working, which is Angular UI Bootstrap. There is also Angular Strap, which is our competitor, which we will fight, it starts to get pretty exciting. There is a few days back, someone actually cloned Angular UI Bootstrap to do widgets for Zerp Foundation. So yeah, we start to see many of them.
Yep. How would you structure a larger Angular application? How would you go about architecting that?
Okay, so this is I think really excellent question, because people start to see the power of it and try to do bigger and bigger projects, and I think we start to build kind of community wisdom regarding this. So there is the tutorial on the Angular site, the phone shop or something like this, which I wouldn't recommend to follow for the bigger projects. There are 2 blog posts, there is 1 blog post and 1 project that I can recommend. So there is a blog post of Brian Ford, which is one of the committers on Angular, and he wrote something like writing huge web applications. There are good things captured in there. And there is the project called Angular App that I wrote with Peter when working on the book, when we were really trying to think hard how to structure a bigger application. So those are 2 things that I can personally recommend.
Okay, thank you for presentation, Pawel. Okay, I will stand.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't know.
Okay, I have one question. If I already have some predefined existing UI solution, how can I integrate, so making custom binding with AngularJS? Can you just briefly explain?
So on the very high level, you basically wrap them as a directive. So you write a directive that you create a custom element or custom attribute, and when this custom attribute or custom element is used, you are kind of bootstrapping the third-party library, because usually, at least with jQuery, there is a method that we call on the DOM element. jQuery wrap DOM element. So this is kind of very, very high-level picture. Then when we go into the details, the story is not that beautiful, because there are subtle or not so subtle lifecycle differences. So the thing with jQuery and AngularJS is that for me it's kind of love-hate relationship, in the sense that AngularJS can work with jQuery, but its philosophy, AngularJS philosophy, is completely opposite to jQuery, because in AngularJS it's model that is the only source of truth, or should be, the things should be taken as this, while in jQuery is the DOM that is source of truth. So you need to kind of fight a bit to synchronize the two. I think it's kind of bigger topic. I would be, pleased to speak with you about this, or maybe let's, hang out after the presentation, because I've got a man who is cutting me off. Yes, here. Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming.